It's really kind of exciting to see the shift that we're about to experience in the next 3 to 5 years, where our student information systems, which are really our bedrock record-keeping systems, are going to be able to record competencies and reflect those in ways that are meaningful to the community, right? The community understands A's, B's, C's, and D's. They don't really understand the idea of measuring experience and ability because they didn't get it when they were in school. And so we really do need our record systems to be reflecting that. And then higher ed and workforce need to be consuming those comprehensive learner records, those competencies, and asking for them. That's what we found when we did a test project here in Michigan, is that the most employers weren't even asking for the high school transcript. So you spend 13 years and you build, an excellent record, or in my case, maybe a mediocre record, and you give them the transcript, and it didn't mean anything to any of the employers that we talked to.
I'm Nikki Herda, and this is Bright, Stories of Hope and Innovation in Michigan Classrooms, a podcast where we celebrate our state's educators and explore the future of learning. Many leaders in education believe there are better ways to represent a student's journey through their K-12 education than the traditional transcript, which typically depicts achievement through letter grades such as A's, B's, C's, etc. What might a richer representation of a student's learning look like? And what would it take for us to get there? In today's episode, I chat with Bruce Umpstead, Director of Statewide Programs for IMS Global Learning Consortium, who explains what comprehensive learner records are, a concept that's gaining traction in state education programs across the nation, and why these digital transcripts might be crucial to building a competency-based future. All right, well, to kick off, the question that I usually start with is, what is it that drew you to education in the first place, and how did that journey lead you to where you are today?
Yeah, so surprisingly, I've had my entire career in education technology, but formally being in K-12 started in 2004 when I went to work for Michigan State University as a project director for a math science partnership with the College of Education, College of Natural Science. So that was my first foray into formal public education in Michigan. That job was excellent. I enjoyed it. There's some challenges working between higher education and K-12. The second year I was there, second full year, I picked up online course at Lansing Community College. I actually took Michigan Virtual's online instructor training, the certification program, and taught managerial finance, which is my background. Actually, I'm a recovering cost accountant. But that surprisingly qualified me when the first and only posting of the Michigan State Education Technology Director position came up with the Michigan Department of Education. And so I was the dark horse candidate. I guess it got down to 2, and they were going to have somebody retire in from Iowa or me. This Bresh, I guess, how old was I then? 36 or 37. And Mike Flanagan was the superintendent, and he had gotten his first real administrator job at 37, so he gave me a shot. And so, in 2007, January, I joined the Michigan Department of Education, and that's really the big, entry into K-12 public education.
So what is it that really drew you to education technology in the sense of what do you love about it? What is the promise and the potential that you saw there that you wanted to pursue?
I love education technology because it seems like every day we get up and we work hard, we actually can change the system. And most of the challenges that we see in public education aren't the people, it's the system that we have to work in.
Very cool. So it's almost like technology is the tool of choice to transform the system from a, kind of top-down level. One concept that I've heard others associate with you is comprehensive learner records. And I was just wondering if you could talk to me a little bit about really, what that is for somebody who might not know, what the big deal is, and how this sort of system would benefit K-12 students.
I left the department in 2013 to facilitate my family's sabbatical, and we'd always wanted the kids to go to a school system in San Diego called High Tech High, which we've become very passionate about. And what they do a deeper learning approach. So it's a competency-based approach, and the founder really explained why they didn't call it competency at the time and why they're really kind of leading the deeper learning effort movement here. And it's the idea that you find the passion of the student and link it to the subject matter, as opposed to trying to stoke the passion of the student for the subject matter. So my kids really took to that. My oldest daughter, who's now graduated, fully employed, yay, she really took to this and saw, was getting A's and B's in the program, where the more traditional classes, she was not an A or B student. So same thing with my youngest, who is now studying art and product design, which is totally what High Tech High did. And so the kids got to go there for a year, and I got to see how it made a difference in the students' lives. It was 45% free and reduced lunch. My children were definitely deep into the minority, with Hispanic and Latino and even Asian Pacific students. It was a great experience for all of us. And so I came back to Michigan as a consultant and started studying the idea. I realized that our transcripts, since I was had worked at the state of Michigan, and I realized all of our student information systems were standards-based, grades-based. And technically, a standard is just part of a competency, right? It's what should be known. It's not the experience or the ability which a competency actually measures. And so when you look at it, our student information systems kind of lock us into this paradigm of grades and lock us into the paradigm of standards-based, because that's what we hold schools accountable for. And our standards are really kind of flat. So I started pursuing that, and that led me to IMS Global, where I actually work full-time now. It was called Extended Transcript at the time, and now it's called Comprehensive Learner Record. And I joined the team full-time as Director of Statewide Programs in 2018, really with a passion and the goal of really promoting competency-based education, and then supporting the record systems that we need to reflect those competencies in our grade books. And we're about to see that. It's really kind of exciting to see the shift that we're about to experience in the next 3 to 5 years, where our student information systems, which are really our bedrock record-keeping systems, are going to be able to record competencies and reflect those in ways that are meaningful to the community, right? The community understands A's, B's, C's, and D's. They don't really understand the idea of measuring experience and ability, because they didn't get it when they were in school. And so we really do need our record systems to be reflecting that. And then higher ed and workforce need to be consuming those comprehensive learner records, those competencies, and asking for them. That's what we found when we did a test project here in Michigan, is that the most employers weren't even asking for the high school transcript. So you spend 13 years and you build, an excellent record, or in my case, maybe a mediocre record, and you give them the transcript, and it didn't mean anything to any of the employers that we talked to. And so what we're hoping with a comprehensive learner record is that there can be meaning in the grades, in the competencies, in the activities that come across. So comprehensive learner record is a standard. It is not a software, which does frustrate some people. It's how you publish the learning record individually for each student. And then if you build the software correctly using the standard, you can put all sorts of learning records into a comprehensive learner record. We're seeing the most traction in the professional certification of teachers, because teachers have to maintain their licensure and certification over time, and that has always been what's called a shoebox exercise. Again, going back to my cost accounting days, but throw all the receipts of all your PD in a box, and then 5 years from now, when you have to go for licensure or certification, you pull those out. And when I was at the department, we were trying to clean that up, and more these licensure systems realized that if they had a document style, which is comprehensive learner record, for capturing all this PD, it's much easier to put into a portfolio and show the teacher's progress or maintenance of their certification and licensure. So we're seeing a lot of progress in K-12 for that, and then we're hoping more and more states, more and more districts will start using comprehensive learner records for documenting student learning at the classroom level, and then hopefully at the transcript level.
Yeah, you mentioned the High Tech High, is that it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I love that name. That sounds like something that would be like in a Netflix series, like the superhero kids that went to High Tech High or something.
Yeah, but the funny thing is High Tech High was low tech.
Oh, well.
Because my kid, no, seriously,
Yeah.
we went out there and they were 1-to-1, but the computers weren't sitting on the desk. The computers came out when they had to do the projects. They were Power School and Google Docs. I mean, it wasn't all the latest. Where they had invested is that they had Photoshop, in one of the engineering classes, which taught both science and math at the same time. I love the one class they had to move away from it, but Calculicious, where the art teacher and the calculus teacher would collaborate, and they just beautiful pictures representing what calculus was. They didn't move too far away. They started producing comic books in the calculus class, but every student at High Tech High took calculus. If you start thinking about that, and then when it showed up on the vanilla transcript, they didn't try to tell you, hey, they just said A, B, C. They knew the college was still only going to take the letter grade. So the school stepped in for the innovation. So yeah, any student that did well at High Tech High could go to anywhere they wanted. My oldest daughter goes, that one friend of mine, she's at Stanford now and blah, blah, blah. My kid went to the right school. She went to Central Michigan University for her. She's got a great job in sales. Who knew? High Tech High stood behind their students, and the universities and colleges accepted that, and they had an incredible acceptance rate, incredible completion rate. And if we could provide that to more of our students in public education, that'd be great. And I might not be working on the front end of that in the classroom, but behind the scenes, I'm hopefully contributing to make it easier to build and track by competency and promote students based on their passion and ability.
I really like the way you describe, it sounds like they describe High Tech High, deeper learning.
Yeah, deeper learning.
And you kept comparing that to flat, right? A flat standard, I can't.
Yeah, flat standard. So if there's 3 balls in a competency, knowledge, activity, and experience, right? The ability and experience. And High Tech High, really, you could map all of those. We took a group out there to do that, and we had this person come in, and they started talking. I wasn't paying attention at the beginning, and I had to stop. I'm like, what class you're teaching? They talk about urban farming. So I thought science, biology, no, English language arts. Their projects were all urban farming, like hands-on urban farming, but they had figured out, because that was the teacher's passion, and they got the kids involved in that passion, and then they had the kids write about their passion. When it shows up on that flat transcript, it says ELA, and their grades, the chances are that grade's going to be higher because the student's engaged. And then because it's High Tech High and they send the transcript to the college and university, the university knows what they're getting, and they favor that student. And because they're delivering equity, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Every kid gets a shot. So I'm obviously, you can tell, still very, very passionate about it. And I do think every day that I'm working on that just from behind the scenes.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to have that, example of like what to envision. So it's cool that, your daughter got to experience it. I can't remember if you said daughter or children.
Daughters too. Yeah.
Two.
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like 2-dimensional, like on the paper, right? Versus this 3-dimensional. How do you represent this kind of 3-dimensional, like really rich educational experience?
Yeah.
It's super neat. So it's great.
And she's dealing with that every day right now. She's got, her top metric is how many calls she makes or how many meetings she's scheduled. But she's like, she's average, great on that, but she decided to tie it to how much dollars it makes the company.
Nice.
This is at a 22-year-old. So you're like, wow, you know how to represent, your contribution to the organization in meaningful ways. And I like those are some of the things I think she picked up from that 1 year in San Diego.
So what would be an example, like if I were, a 12th grade student, right? Like what might my transcript look like? Just a completely hypothetical example.
Well, if you lived in North Dakota, you would actually have a comprehensive learner record transcript. So they're pulling all the data out of Power School, which is a very prominent student information system, and they're putting it into a comprehensive learner record, and that will probably come across as your transcript. But let's say that you went to CTE as well, and you studied business or you studied food services or something like that, and like if you lived in Idaho, they would issue a badge for completing that CTE credit. Well, that badge can be put into a comprehensive learner record, and then you are given, in North Dakota, you're giving a wallet, a digital wallet you have on your phone that has all of these records. So there's your transcript. In the future, the dream would be each of your courses would be its own little record, but you'd have your transcript and then you'd have all your CTE credits. But you also worked for, the bakery, and they gave you a record of your service or of your work record. That could be turned into a comprehensive learner record given to your wallet. And then when your employer or your college asks for specific details on your lifelong learning, you can edit that, kind of like your resume, and put it into a format and send it to that employer or to that college.
That's really neat. I've heard it described before, kind of like a LinkedIn portfolio or profile, or a resume. But yeah, it makes a whole lot of sense. It really does. So, and I can see how that kind of, in a way, more like qualitative data, rather than just the A, B, C, D, would behoove. Yeah.
I can tell you in the next 5 years, this will be a major thrust for many of the learning platforms that we use right now to document the learning for each individual student. So that's the core of comprehensive learner record, is you document the learning for each individual student. You can still have your state reports, you can still have your district level reports, and you can look in the aggregate, you can look at trends and things like that, but this is a way to support each individual learner as they move through the system.
I'm Nikki Herda, and you're listening to Bright, a podcast that's made possible by Michigan Virtual, a nonprofit organization that's leading and collaborating to build learning environments for tomorrow. Today, I'm chatting with Bruce Umpstead, Director of Statewide Programs for IMS Global Learning Consortium. Up next, we chat about digital badging, the future of learning analytics, and what advice Bruce has for teachers interested in learning more about how to apply these concepts in their classrooms. I'm interested in the concept of digital credentials, and so I'm wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about that and what role they play in this kind of vision you're describing with the comprehensive learner records.
The vision is to tie it back to digital credentials, is that you build into a competency, you issue a badge that the student information system can track, right? And the student, that gives additional reward. I mean, it really is like the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, your recognition for that achievement, that discrete element of knowledge that they've developed that, say, English 101A doesn't necessarily say, but, maybe,
I can write a thesis statement,
right,
blah, blah, blah,
right,
blah, blah, and you get a
right.
little, is it visual? It's like just a little.
Yeah, it's just an icon. It's just like something you'd see on a Girl Scout, vest. But it's digital.
Yeah, that's very fascinating, the whole concept. So thank you. Now, we may have covered it, I'm not sure, but is there anything else that you'd want to say about, you just mentioned that learning analytics in general is a passion of yours. Is there anything else out of this story in terms of learning analytics that we're missing, how they play a role?
The good news is analytics have just even gotten better over time. Like at where I work, IMS Global, we have in-app, meaning like when the student's using the application, event capture called Caliper, and all the leading learning management systems have this. So basically you can find out what the student watched, when they stopped watching it, how far they got down on a page, all of this stuff, and it can come back in the form of learning analytics. And when you aggregate those little activities, it's just like Farmville or anything else, that we see in gaming, you can actually see where the student gets stuck and provide the resources to help them get unstuck. And the systems are coming up to speed on that, and we just have to help our educators understand that the power of analytics are there, and they need to start asking for it, and they'll be very, very surprised and pleased on the level of support they can provide their students by looking at this next generation of learning analytics.
And that makes sense. That's kind of what I was wondering, because the comprehensive learner record, at least at the end of the line, shows you what they accomplished. But this other set of analytics you're referring to about engagement helps the teacher address the student needs throughout the experience.
I don't know. I mean, I think this is happening in higher ed, but you can use comprehensive learner record to wrap any type of individual record. So the challenge with these learning analytics, there really is, it's big data. So I mean, it's like, which video did the student launch? How much did they watch it for? Bringing that back and then corresponding it with the hard data of like, how did they do on the benchmark assessment or summative or formative assessment? So then you have to kind of push those things together. But in the future, this is, I think, what the Broward County project wants to do, is be able to push all that data into a single comprehensive learner record for that student for the year. So when they pass it over to the teacher can look at the face of the CLR for that, let's say, math, and they can understand where the student is at, so they don't have to start over every year, right? Or assume that everybody's at the same level, so they can start providing support for the student the next year at the level where the student is at. And as our systems get more sophisticated, hopefully they'll read those CLRs, right? That will also have these learning analytics. Because right now they're just all dumped into it's called a data lake. And then the districts look at the data lake and try to make some decisions. But if you capture the individual student record in that CLR, then that could be quite powerful for personalized learning. So that, I think, that might be 10 years out, but pretty excited about the future of learning analytics aiding educators and parents.
So a lot of this, right, is pretty long-term vision stuff, right, which is understandable. But I was wondering if there was a teacher, listening that was like just really geeked about this and either wanted to learn more about, comprehensive learner records, learning analytics, or digital credentials. Where would you advise that they start? And is there anything out there, that somebody could implement, tomorrow that isn't 10 years out?
I've got a meeting this week with Mastery Transcript, which is probably more at the high school level, but they have you can do it just in a single class. I know I live in DeWitt, Michigan, and I know the DeWitt High School uses it to document some of their softer skill classes, their electives. So Mastery Transcript Consortium offers a platform for offering competency-based. And we're going to talk, because they've got a partnership with about 6 universities to take their transcript. It sounds like transcript, but really, if you just want to document a competency-based achievement for a student, you can use their platform as a single teacher. And there's several of those around, and they're coming, becoming more and more frequent. But that is one that you can use. Another popular one in our midst is called Badger. That's typically the organization has to deploy Badger. I know that Michigan Virtual looked at that, but that's open source platform for issuing credentials and badges. So I mean, I probably could come up with a list. You can always go out to, we have a product directory at IMS Global to see all of the different products that are issuing badges or comprehensive learner record. So I don't think teachers are in short supply of applications. It's just finding the ones that actually issue a credential that's of value, of worth. More and more folks are starting to offer that, for sure.
Yeah, I imagine it'd be, probably a lot for an individual teacher to take this on without having the system in place.
They do it every day. Actually, I wanted to share how we didn't issue a digital credential, but my sister, Erin, is a English teacher, ELA teacher at Holt High School, and she took her capstone class, and I'm not sure she'd ever do this again because the students just wanted to sit in class and write, and we made them do podcasts and interview people in their community, and we trained them how to do podcasts, and we kind of built, it was all around kind of telling the hero's journey of someone they cared about deeply. I mean, it was a profound experience. I wish we could have issued a digital credential, but it was much easier to use like Soundtrap, which is the tool that we used, or Audacity. We could have installed that, but they would have had to have, weekend access to the computer lab. But the ability to kind of produce next generation media, share it with friends and family, really produce good work. It was quite an amazing experience. And so, the next step would just have been to find a version of Badger somewhere on the web and get that credential issued. And that's something I think like Mastery Transcript and some of these other services teachers can do to kind of create additional meaning for the achievement.
Right. So like a teacher, your sister in that case, could have gone, gotten involved with one of these platforms, made an account, and created a credential basically for her students and said, here you go, you're certified in podcast creation or whatever it might be,
Right.
you know,
Right.
in the hero's journey. So
Yep.
very cool, very cool. Yeah.
And I think that's where most organizations are at. What we need is the other side of the market to start valuing those, right? So
Exactly.
when we talk about LinkedIn, there's very valuable that they do that. I know that Salesforce, another very large organization, starting to issue those kind of badges. What was really fascinating, a couple years ago, I learned that Facebook, Google, all these large organizations are starting to badge their employees. So when they go to build the next generation team, they just have to search by badge. They don't have to actually get into resumes and other things like that.
I imagine another thing, you know, a teacher could try if they were like really interested would be, you know, getting some sort of micro credential or digital certification themselves, right? I imagine if you experience it, you know.
Yeah, Digital Promise is a popular platform. I know that Michigan Virtual is looking at that. Actually, I'm recruiting Ken to present at our Digital Credential Conference with another leading credentialing group expert. So it's coming. It is coming. You know, another group that's doing a lot of digital credentials, and MB is a partner with them, is the Michigan Elementary and Secondary Principals Association, School Principals Association. That group is, they've been doing a lot of work in competency, a lot of work in digital credentials. So I got to give it to Paul over there.
All right, a little bit of a shift here. Can you tell me about a teacher who had an impact in your life?
I had a business professor, so I got my MBA, and I walked into a class. It was called Finance for Non-Finance Majors. And I was on time, but I get bumped on the way in the door by all the non-finance majors leaving the room. So it was named for non-finance majors, but only finance majors stuck it out because we started at the very basic level of should this bank give this auto repair shop a loan? Can they pay it back? Right? All the way up into, and I'm going to date myself, what type of financial instrument should the cable industry use to lay all the cable? I mean, this is like MTV, right? MTV kind of stuff. And that was actually on a CD-ROM, so that would have been Ed Tech, right?
Yeah.
And he was just the best professor I ever had. It was the first time he taught the class. I went back and visited him a couple of times, and students didn't appreciate the class as much as I did. But I mean, I paid for an MBA from Michigan State University, and that one class made it all worthwhile because it tied everything back to, he even used Steve Jobs to say, why did Steve Jobs want to dominate an industry? Why did he want to get to 70% market share? And Steve Jobs, this is back in the 80s, was trying to calculate the value of having like 68% market share versus 65, and how much should he be willing to spend on marketing and other things to get to that level. And when you have that understanding that a lot of our decisions can come down to dollars and cents, it is eye-opening. I think his name was Naveen Khanna. I think Dr. Naveen Khanna. He probably is retired now, but I appreciated him for sure.
And it sounds like he did a really nice job of, you know, making it applicable and making it practical. Is that, you think, really what?
Yeah, everything was, it was all project-based.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing that. This is one of my favorite questions, but it is a big one. Can you tell me about your vision for student learning? And so just to make it more concrete, if it were up to you, what would you just really want to see for every single student in our state?
Well, we really tried a couple of times. Back when we had federal funding for ed tech, we put money into demonstrated models of proficiency. That's a very funny way to say competency. But we if I was to do that again, I would have focused on just a couple of core programs as opposed to, you know, putting money in the field with 10. But we really did start several programs that were competency-based. And that's kind of how I found out that our grade book doesn't really support competency-based education. Like I was saying, in the next 5 years, I think that's going to be a major change. So I would definitely make it competency, and I wouldn't use a very popular definition in K-12 for competency, because, you know, you look at Common Core, ELA, and math, and let me tell you, I'm a big supporter of those. Both my kids did much better in school because of those standards programs. But at the end of the day, the competencies they talk about in our standards are really flat. They're really knowledge, knowledge standards. We really do need to have standards for applying our knowledge and standards for the expertise or experience students have. So those are the three things. And when you look at these leading programs, like High Tech High, and there's several others around the country, they get that. The problem is that they still want to send their kids to college, which wants the letter grade. They still want, so the entire system kind of has to change to start appreciating this robust, deeper learning competency. It probably needs to start on the outside. It can't start at the core. So let's leave our ELA language, programs alone, probably government, probably U.S. history, and focus, on kind of from the edges. That's how innovation happens. Find ways like Mastery Transcripts and others to document that. Get it on a meaningful transcript. Get our systems issuing comprehensive learner records, and slowly move the system towards, a deeper competency-based personalized learning approach that doesn't leave, at-risk students behind.
Any words of advice or encouragement you'd like to share with fellow educators out there right now?
I think we have to have a picture of something bigger than what we're working on right now, so that we know, and I've read this is there's a psychology or sociology behind this, is that when we have a bigger goal in the future, the here and now, the grind is worth it. When we get caught up in the grind, it's not worth it. And how we're treating educators, specifically teachers, the grind's real, right? So we have to kind of give people that big picture vision. We need to enable that as much as possible. I believe educational technology hopefully will start to help. There's a big fear about educational technology help you focus on, how do I get that specific question right, answer right. But hopefully EdTech will help people with a bigger picture and a bigger view of where their students are going, and lock in on really delivering the future by having these well-rounded students, well-rounded citizens going out into the world equipped to pursue their passion. I think that's important. And the second thing is to have a hobby. I've been hiking and backpacking and camping a lot. That's been helpful to get through COVID. But I've also been doing a little stand-up comedy, and it makes me a better presenter. It makes me more confident. And, it just takes kind of the pressure off, and I can laugh at myself. And so when things kind of get you down, having a hobby, especially something that makes you laugh, I think, is kind of a key to making this whole thing work.
There are some really innovative schools out there, such as High Tech High in San Diego, who are modeling what the future of student learning could look like. But with letter grades so deeply embedded in our educational institutions, not to mention our society at large, it's difficult to imagine how we might represent these rich and personalized learning experiences in a way that doesn't fall flat on paper, especially when you start thinking about how to aggregate this data across classrooms, schools, and states. But comprehensive learner records and digital badging present one promising pathway forward, and there are plenty of companies like IMS Global Learning Consortium out there working behind the scenes to get everyone on the same page. Without a doubt, it's challenging work to improve the records that follow our K-12 students into their careers after high school education. But with leaders like Bruce forging our path forward, if there's one thing we're certain of, it's that the future is bright. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Bright, Stories of Hope and Innovation in Michigan Classrooms. This podcast is produced by Herbie Gaylord, is hosted by me, Nikki Herda, and is shaped by many of our passionate and talented colleagues. Big thanks to Krista Green, Ann Perez, Ann Kraft, and Brandon Batista for their contributions to this episode. The Bright podcast is made possible by Michigan Virtual, a nonprofit organization that's leading and collaborating to build learning environments for tomorrow. Education is changing faster than ever. Discover new models and resources to move learning forward at your school at michiganvirtual.org.